Hello, my name is Samuel Morris and this is Elementary English. Today we're going to go over how communication changes when moving from one genre to another, and especially while reading maps. This skill is super important and it's a skill that we use honestly every single day. So why don't you join me this morning? Maps represent the real world on a much smaller scale. They'll help you travel from one location to another. They can help you organize information, and they can also help you figure out where you are, where you want to go, and how to get there. There are many types of maps, and the kind that you use will depend on, well, what you want to know. A few examples that you may have encountered are a street map, looking for roads and their names and various locations, maybe a restaurant. Maybe you have done a project for your geography class and used a topographic map that has informed you about land masses, elevations, features. Maybe you've been on vacation, and a personal favorite use of mine is a park map. A park map will show you trails, roads, points of interest, and important buildings such as restrooms along the way. Whether you're using a paper map or probably nowadays a GPS technology map, these are important parts of our lives because they help us get around every single day. So all sorts of maps have been one of the most important inventions for thousands of years. And these inventions have allowed us to explore, explain, and navigate our way throughout the world. The earliest surviving maps include cave paintings and etchings on tusk and stone. These maps are over 20,000 years old. They've been found in ancient Babylon and Greece, Rome, China, and India. So maps have been a part of our daily lives for our whole lives, for nearly our whole existence. Now, modern transportation, the use of surveillance, aircraft, and satellite imagery have changed the documentation of these areas from stone and tusk carvings and cave paintings to handheld devices, right? And that has made this documentation of areas that were previously inaccessible free, accurate, and more accessible than ever before. Now, in literature, when we would like to directly address the reader, we use the second person point of view. And we're going to do the same thing when we interact with maps, whether old or new. So the same thing is true when we're communicating about maps, regardless if we're giving or receiving directions, or if we're using a GPS interactive map with voice technology. You're addressing, or you've been addressed in the second person point of view to help you get to where you need to go. You must have heard it before if you've used a handheld technological map that says the destination is on your left, or in 2 miles turn right. All of these phrases are in the second person because they're directly addressing you and allowing you to interact with the map by the matter of language. So in order to address maps via the English language, we have to stop and ask ourselves 3 important questions. Why, what, and how? Now, these questions may seem generic, but trust me, they're very specific when you're interacting with maps. The first one is why. That's simply asking, well, why do we even need to look at this map? Most of the time, it's because you are in one place and need to get to another. But it could be because somebody asked you for directions, and you're providing that to them by translating what's on the map into language. It could be if you're like me and you just like to look at maps to become familiar with a place. That could be a pastime, and there's careers made of those who can map using satellite imagery and communicate and create these maps from scratch as well. The second question is what? For what purpose am I going to use this map? Is it to go find a bite to eat? Or is it to locate a friend's house? Maybe it's my first day at a new job and I want to get there early, so I need to know exactly how long it's going to take me to arrive via car. The third question is how. Now this question changes almost everything about how you're going to communicate because it's, well, how you're getting from one place to another. The directions will be very different if you're arriving via car as if you would be via public transportation or on foot or riding your bicycle on a nice day. These three questions help us turn the pictures, symbols, and iconography of maps into language that's easy to access for everybody. So when we transfer this knowledge of pictures and symbols on maps into language, it's important to answer those three questions and also remember to use the second person point of view when we're narrating that to whomever it may be. This is important because it's going to allow that person to interact with the map, with the language that you're using as you directly address them. And folks oftentimes remember things much more well if they're addressed directly. So let's practice with an example. Here you'll see a map of the Kansas City streetcar route. Now, let's say, well, why? Why do we need to look at this? Let's say I would really like a cup of coffee and I'm at Union Station right now, but I want to go see the river at the same time. So we already know just from that scenario the why, the what, and the how. The why is I need to get from one place to another and get that cup of coffee. The what is I need to find out how to get exactly from Union Station to a coffee shop in the River Market. And the how, well, via the Kansas City streetcar. So we're going to take these three answers, so to speak, and transfer them into the second person point of view and address the reader directly, right? So if it's me, you would say, you, Mr. Morris, you would get on the streetcar headed north at Union Station and stay there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stops. And at the 9th stop in River Market West, go ahead and get off the streetcar and you'll find a coffee shop around there. Let's try with another example. Let's say you see this map on a classroom door. Let's say you're in classroom number 2 and you need to head to the school nurse. So right now we understand those three questions again: the why, the what, and the how. We need to get from classroom 2 to the nurse's office. We need to specifically travel by foot. And the why, well, let's just say I hope you're okay and it's not too bad, right? I hope it's just a check-in. So in order to communicate this, again, whether I'm telling you or you're telling a friend, we're always going to use the pronoun you. You will exit from room 2 and turn to the left, right? You'll turn to the left, walk down the hallway, and then turn on your first right, and you'll see the school nurse there straight ahead. Now, I'll have you try with one last example. Let's say I told you this scenario. I'm over by Union Station again, and I need to pick up a friend from the airport. Thankfully, I have my own car, and I can leave right now. So right away, we know those three answers, right? We know those three parts to reading maps and changing those into the language. Why is, well, I need to go give my friend a ride. What is between the airport and back towards Kansas City. And how is, well, in my personal vehicle. So now you'll give me that information, and remember, use the second person. So you'll answer those three questions, you'll inform me on how to get on which road and head in which direction from downtown Kansas City to the airport in my personal vehicle. So go ahead and look at the map and try for yourself. Well, I hope that was helpful, the practice of communicating with maps, because, well, it's a skill that I personally use every single day. And this is a skill that you can practice too. even if you're not going directly from one place or another. A great way to practice interacting with maps and interacting with language is exactly this. And it's actually a pastime of my own. If I, let's say, have a friend who wants to come and visit Kansas City, I'll look at some maps of Kansas City and sites of interest and these important places in Kansas City on a map, and I'll translate that into a travel book, into a couple of pages of here are the things you should see and do and how to get there while in Kansas City. And I'll do the same thing for myself at another city of interest. Let's say I wanted to go visit a friend in Houston or go try some food in Chicago, right? I could do the same thing thanks to the power of the internet we have accessible to us now to look and engage with those maps, to address that in the second person, to directly whomever is going to use it and create a travel guide for cities of interest for you, for friends, or for anyone. And this is actually a job that people have and get paid to do. It's an incredible use of social studies skills, English language arts skills, as well as people skills, and I really hope it's helped you today. So that's going to conclude our lesson, and it has been an absolute pleasure to have you in this class today. Once again, my name is Samuel Morris, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm Miss Aker, and we are ready for some math thinking today. Let's get started with Just Know It. Remember, that's the part where we know it just like that. And today we're going to continue some of the work we did last week, and we are going to practice adding fractions with common denominators. So the first one here, look at those numerators. Next one. All right. Think fast. Next one. And last one isn't addition, it's subtraction. I think you can do it. Okay, let's check your work. How'd you do with the Just Know It? 1/2 plus 2/2 equals 3/2. Nice job. Remember, you just add those numerators, the denominators stay the same. 4/10 plus 2/10. 6/10. Nice job. And the next one, 1/3 plus 1/3. Those are both unit fractions. And yeah, if you said 2/3, you got it. And this next one, 2/4 plus 1/4, 3/4. And last one, little challenge here, some subtraction. 4/4 minus 1/4, 3/4. So we're taking one piece from the whole, one part. Nice work. Let's move on to figure it out. For Figure It Out, we have a word problem here, and we're going to use those 4 steps that we use for every word problem. Do you remember them? Read, think, draw, write. By following those steps when we work on word problems, it'll really help us make sure that we're showing our thinking and solving what the problem is wanting us to solve. So let's take a look at this one. King's tablet was fully charged in the morning. Then he used 2/10 playing games like kids do, 4/10 reading books, good job King, and 3/10 doing homework. What fraction of the charge remains on King's tablet? Look, there's a picture of the tablet right there. Okay, so let's get our RTDW. So you're figuring this out at home. What could we do to make sure that we're solving for what the question is asking? It wants to know how much charge remains. Okay, so that means it's going to be something that's left over once we use the 2/10 for the games and the 4/10 for the books and then the 3/10 for homework. So I'm remembering last week when we were working on our Figure It Out and we were kind of using a number bond to decompose. And so let's decompose and let's see, if 10 is the denominator, that must mean the whole is 10/10. Okay, and we have 2/10 here, 4/10, and 3/10. So I have my number bond here, and I used all of that up, so I need to know how much is remaining. You know what? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, that wasn't a very good model. So when we draw a model and it doesn't really help us, then what we should do is stop and try something new. I think I want to do fraction strips instead, or maybe a bar model. Let's think about it together. What would you use? Okay, let's try that bar model. So let's make our 10. So let's do 4 lines, because that'll make 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if we cut that in half, that'll give us 10 parts. And so we know each of these parts is 1/10. So if King had used 2/10 playing games, so let's shade that. 4/10 reading books. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3/10 doing homework. 1, 2, 3. How much charge is left over? I'm noticing that there's one part of our whole that's not shaded. So that must mean that he has 1/10 of the charge remaining. So we read it, we thought about it, we drew 2 models. Our first model didn't really make sense, so we drew a second model. Now let's write an equation to help us show our thinking. So first we added together 2/10 plus 4/10 plus 3/10, and we got 9/10. And we know that 10/10 minus 9/10 equals 1/10. And we know that because we proved it right there. Great job with the figure it out today. We just practiced a problem that used subtraction, or figuring out what was left over. And so today, for our what's new, we're going to actually use the same learning target as last week, but instead of practicing addition, we're going to focus on subtraction. So if you'll remember, our learning target was, I can use models to add and subtract fractions. And we reminded ourselves that models are different drawings we can do, like using a number line, or an area or bar model, or fraction strips, or a number bond like we tried out but didn't work so well for us. To add, which is me putting them together, and subtract, which means finding the difference or taking away. Fractions, the numerator and denominator. You know, the Frankie fraction song that helped us remember what each of those means. So today, when we're working on our what's new word problems, we're going to keep thinking about what is the problem asking and how it shows us if we should add or subtract or do some combination. So grab that piece of paper and a writing tool so you can get started with me on what's new. I see we have a word problem here, so I'm going to start by writing out my steps. R, T, D, W. Read, think, draw, write. Let's read it. Atticus is planting a garden for the spring. 2/8 of the garden will be tulips. What fraction is left to grow other flowers? Okay, I think that it's pretty important to know that there's 2/8 of the garden is tulips. That's that flower. And I think we're going to be solving for what's left. It says what's left to grow. So 2/8 is already taken up, and what's left? So I think I would like to draw a model. And to me, I want to start with an equation too. So if 2/8 is the part we know, we can see that the denominator is eighths. So in 8 parts. So we know the whole of that garden would be 8/8 because that equals 1 whole. So if I wanted to write an equation, I would write 8/8, that's the whole garden, minus 2/8 of the garden, which is going to be tulips, equals some number. Okay, so that's going to be some fraction that's left over. So I can do this, I could do it just like that. I can just take 2/8 from 8/8 by subtracting the numerators. So I could see that that would equal 6/8. But you know what? I want to prove it. So I want to make sure I show that what I solved for in my head is also true with my model. So I'm going to make sure I draw that model. So I have I'm fond of the bar models. I'm going to draw 4 parts, so I need 3 lines. And then I'm going to put that in half, so that gives me 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. And I can show my thinking about this. 1/8, 1/8, whoops, 1/8, 1/8. And if I have the whole, that's the whole garden, and 2/8 are going to be tulips. So how much is left to be other things? Well, this is 3/8 and 3/8, so that equals 6/8. I have proven what I solved from my equation by using this model. Now I'm going to write a sentence. What fraction is left to grow other flowers? 6/8 is left for other flowers. We got it. Here's another one. Let's go through our steps. R, T, D, W. Jaden shared his bag of chips with his cousins. That's nice of him. He gave 2/8 to Henry and 3/8 to Josiah. What fraction of the bag does he have left to eat? Okay, so again, I'm seeing this eighths. So again, this is another word problem that has eighths as its whole, so 8 parts. So we know we're going to have 8/8 equals the entire bag of chips. So it's like he's dividing it into 8 parts. He gave 2/8 to Henry. So 2/8 is for Henry. And he gave 3/8 to Josiah. So 3/8 equals J, I'll put J, Josiah like that, JS. Okay, so we're thinking about it. We want to know what's left for Jaden. What does he get to have? So if this is the whole and these are the parts that he's giving away, we need to take away these parts from the whole. Now we could do this a couple ways. We could first take away Henry's from the whole, and then what's ever left, we could take away Josiah's. Or what if we use what we did last week and we put these together first? So let's do that. We're going to add up the parts that he's taking or he's giving away. And I know I'm going to add the numerator, so I get 5/8 because it's still the same number of parts. Okay, so he's giving away 5/8. So now I can write a second equation. 8/8 minus 5/8 equals, and I'm going to use a letter here. I'm going to use C for chips. And I better write that somewhere so people know that C equals chips for Jaden. That way, if someone's looking at this, they know that the letter I used, what that means. Okay, let's draw a model. What if we draw fraction strips? So if we start with the whole, here's our one whole bag of chips. And we have 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, and 1/8. So that's the 5/8 he's going to give away. And we need to know how many are left. So if we have 6, 7, 8, looks like these 3 are left. And if I check my work over here, 8/8 minus 5/8, C equals 3/8. I proved my solving in the equation. Now I can write a sentence to help me show. And my work is kind of a little bit messy, but that's okay because I'm showing all the different things that my brain is going through while I solve. And I'm just going to write a small sentence here. So there are 3/8 of, the bag left for Jaden. I hope Jaden enjoys those chips. It's one of my favorite parts of our time together where you at home get to try it out and share with us on social media, or you can let me know. Some of my students have let me know that they've tried some of these problems at home. So here are some try it problems for you. So we have 2 bare number problems, and they both have common denominators, but these expressions say 4, fifths minus 2 fifths. So you're going to be solving for the difference of that. And then 8 sixths minus 2 sixths. So you're going to be solving for the difference of that one. See what you come up with. And what about this word problem? Let's see. So Angel ran 2 fifths of a race. What fraction of the race does Angel have left? You guys love running and playing outside. And if you ever run a race, you want to know how far you have to go. Well, she has ran 2 fifths. Could you use subtraction? Or maybe you could use addition to solve for how much she has left to go. Remember, using a model can always help you figure out and show your thinking. And that is really helpful. Even if you think you know it, it's nice to prove it. So, as usual, we've come to the end of our time together. Had so much fun with you today.
Hello, I'm Mr. Steinhauer, and this is 3rd and 4th grade science. Today, we'll be talking about patterns in motion. All you'll need for today's lesson are a few pieces of paper and something to write with. That'll help you keep track of vocabulary we discuss, but it'll also help you follow along with me in doing today's activity. Before we jump into talking about and finding our own patterns in motion, let's review some vocabulary from our previous lessons. In our last lesson, we talked about balanced forces and unbalanced forces. Remember that balanced forces are 2 forces of the same size acting on the same object. Unbalanced forces are different sized forces acting on the same object. We also talked about Isaac Newton. He lived over 300 years ago, but his discoveries and observations changed science forever and still impact us today. So far, we've already discussed one of his 3 laws. That's Newton's second law of motion, which says that the acceleration, the speeding up, of an object depends on its mass, the matter inside it, and the force used to move it. Force and mass together affect the speed or acceleration of an object. Today we'll also talk about Newton's 3rd law of motion. Isaac Newton's 3rd law of motion says that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When we push on a wall, there's a force from the wall that pushes back. When we stand, a force from the ground pushes back on us. We also see Newton's 3rd law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction when we look at patterns of motion. Think about a basketball player dribbling a ball. Every time they use force to push down on that basketball, the ground takes force and pushes it back up to meet their hand. Basketball players don't even have to look at the basketball as it's dribbling because they know inherently that that ball is going to bounce right back up to meet their palm. That's because of Newton's 3rd law of motion. And that also describes one pattern of motion that we'll discuss today. Up and down, a bouncing effect that we see through all kinds of objects, even objects that don't bounce well. If you knock something off your table on accident, chances are, even if it's a glass of water, that when the glass hits the ground and the water spills all over, that glass will also bounce back up. There's still force that that falling glass has that the ground gives it back to give it enough bounce. So up and down is a pattern of motion. Next, we're going to describe and draw out some patterns of motion together. I'm going to prepare my desk. Prepare your workspace now so that you can draw along with me. So I've got my notebook here, got my writing utensil using a Sharpie just because it'll make big, thick lines that'll be easy for you to see. First thing I'm going to do is draw a way to represent 5 different patterns of motion. The first one is one we just talked about. up and down. This is also a perfect example of Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Or when you dribble the ball down, it's going to bounce back up. A second pattern of motion that we could describe is the same pattern of motion you make on a swing set. That's back and forth. Notice the spelling is a little different than the number. Fourth is another way for forward. So we have this here, back, then forth, then back, then forth. Going back and forth is also an example of Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Pattern number 3. Remember, I'm describing them first, and then you and I will write them down together. This one is one that we see in the Kansas City area every spring. Of course, there are other ways you can do this, like at a water park. A spiral. What's one example of a spiral motion? The example that comes to my mind when I see this is a tornado, right? That makes a classic spiral motion in the formation of the cyclone. Something that happens with tornadoes, not every other spiral necessarily, but with tornadoes, there's also going to be a force that goes the opposite direction on the outside of that tornado. So in that way, tornadoes are another example of Newton's third law of motion, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Of course, not every spiral is going to show that. This pattern of motion, you could imagine going down a water slide or even riding some sort of roller coaster with a spiral pattern in it. Our fourth pattern in motion is... Can you predict what I'm going to do next? That's right. Just back to the beginning. You might think of like a clock. Clocks will do that. You'll also, if you spin something around, it's going to follow this pattern of motion. If you hold an object and then you spin it in a circular motion, you'll notice that it makes a circular pattern. Notice this word here means there's a circle in it. You see that circ? Our fifth and final pattern that we will describe today is this. What would you describe this pattern of motion as? How would you name this pattern of motion? Let's call it a zigzag. Gets its name from these Z letters, right? Zig, zag. They make those sharp edges just like those Z letters. Next, we're going to map out our patterns of motion that we discussed. Then you will find a final pattern of motion on your own to complete this diagram. Remember that a diagram is a drawing or plan that describes something. The first thing we're going to do for our diagram, just like the previous diagram we've made in our class together, we're going to give it a title. Patterns of motion. And then let's go ahead and leave a space for 6 different numbers. The first pattern of motion we described was up, down. Remember, dribbling, throwing something up in the air and it coming down is an example of up and down. We also described back and forth, like a swing. Remember, these two show Newton's third law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every action, equal opposite reaction. Our third example was a spiral, a totally different pattern of motion. Remember, you're building this diagram with me. Number 4 was circular, and number 5 was zigzag. Yours might look a little bit different than mine. That's A-okay, that's totally fine. Not all diagrams will look exactly the same. Now number 6. This is where we say, now it's your turn. You are going to complete your diagram by thinking of a 6th pattern in motion. When you complete your diagram, regardless, share it with a loved one. That concludes today's lesson. It's been my pleasure having you in class today. I'm Mr. Steinauer, and I'll see you next week.
Welcome back to PE with Coach K. I am also known as Karina Jones. We are in our 4th segment, and during these segments, we have been going over different health-related fitness components. So we've done cardiovascular endurance, where we are working our heart, our lungs, and our muscles all at the same time for a long period of time. So remember, we had running, we were doing flip cup, we did a couple different challenges that will help increase our cardiovascular endurance. Today, we are going to slide on into muscular endurance and strength. So muscular endurance and strength are two different things. There's muscular endurance and then there's muscular strength. So when you hear the word endurance, just think of doing something repetitively over a long period of time and able to do it for that time frame. Strength is being able to exert certain force in your muscles, lifting or moving different objects and doing different things with different muscles in your body. Endurance is how long you can do it for. Strength is the ability to actually do it. So we are going to go through a quick little warm-up that will prepare our muscles to perform exercises that will help improve your muscular endurance and strength. So if you need to pause this video, make sure you have some space, have some water right next to you, and then we'll go through it together. So I'm going to go through 3 different warm-up exercises, and then I will introduce to you actual exercises you can do at home right where you are that will help improve your muscular endurance and strength. So let's go ahead and get warmed up. If you need to pause the video, grab a drink of water, gather whatever you need, and then come back. We'll warm up and then go into the muscular strength and endurance exercises. So this first warm-up are just shoulder rolls with our arms or arm circles. Warming up your shoulders, so you'll use both arms. Roll them back, and we'll do this for about 30 seconds. Each little warm-up we'll do for 30 seconds just to get the blood flowing and to increase mobility in our muscles and joints. Roll them back. I'll show you from the side. And you can go fast, but you want to keep it at a warm-up pace. Keep rolling for about 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Next, we are going to do a butt kick where you are kicking your butt with your right and your left along with a cross of your arms right in front of your chest. Just to get the mobility going in the shoulders, the joints, the muscles, and to warm up our legs all at the same time. So we'll do this for about 15 more seconds. Remember, go at a warm-up pace. You don't have to go fast like this. Just slow it down. Do what works for you. 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Our last warm-up, we're going to warm up the wrist because we will do a lot of upper body strength exercises and we will be on our wrists. So you are going to put your fingers together, interlock them, and then just roll your wrists in a circular motion, just like this. Rolling, rolling, rolling. Oh, I heard a crack. You may hear a crack too, but it's okay, as long as it doesn't hurt. About 5 more seconds. 2, and 1. Now, if you need extra little warm-up, you can rewind this and maybe do it again or add some different warm-ups that work for you. So we're going to jump right into some muscular strength and endurance exercises that you can do at home to improve your muscular endurance. So muscular endurance is not just the ability to be able to, strengthen your muscles when you perform sports. It also benefits your sleep, and it will help boost confidence in yourself, So don't just look at it as, I have to be an athlete in order to really care about improving my muscular endurance and strength. No, it's good for your overall body and your health. So don't think of it as that. So it benefits everybody in every way of your health. So let's jump right into our first exercise that will help improve our muscular endurance and strength. You can do this at home. This first exercise is called a plank. This is something that you may have heard of before or may have done it before. So you're going to get on the ground. So make sure you have some comfortable space and enough space. So start on your knees. And you'll just sit on the ground just to make sure where you are. Watch your space. And we are going to do a plank on our forearms right here. And you're going to bring your forearms down and then bring your feet up to straighten your legs to get your knees and legs off the ground. So you're going to hold this position. You don't want your bottom in the air. You don't want it too low. You want it right where everything is level. Squeeze your stomach. Squeeze your glutes, which is right in your bottom area. Squeeze your quad muscles. And breathe, because it's easy for us to hold the position in a plank and not breathe. So you want to make sure you breathe while doing this exercise. So we're going to hold it for about 30 seconds. If you need to drop and go on your knees, then you can. Remember, this is up to you. It's your pace. It's your body. So you do what's best for you. So we're going to hold it in 3. I'm here with you. 2, 1, legs up. Squeeze. Make sure you breathe. Deep breaths. No bottom up. No hips down. Everything should be a straight line. You should be able to put a cup on your back so you can actually test to see if you can hold a cup on your back while holding the plank position. And just keep breathing. 10 more seconds. Squeeze your core. And it's normal if you start to shake. That means your muscles are working. 5, 4, 3, 2, and slowly come down. So that was our plank. Now we're going to go into our second exercise that will help improve your muscular endurance and strength. These are called walking lunges. So it is a lunge on the right and the left. Both legs should go into a 90-degree angle. You don't want to drop your knee and bounce it off the floor. You just want to squat down, then come back up, and then switch legs so that you are walking. You'll do your right, and then you'll do your left. So let's do this for about 30 seconds. We'll do it together, starting in 5. Start with the right leg, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'll have my hands here because this helps my balance. You can have your hands on your hips, but make sure you alternate which leg goes in front as you are walking side to side, from one side to the other. And remember to breathe. Every time we perform an exercise or even warming up, you want to make sure that you are breathing 90 degrees on each leg. Try not to bounce your knee off of the ground. You may not get as low as me, so do what works for your body. About 10 more seconds. You can pick up the pace if you want to, or go slow. 3, 2, and 1. All right, so our last and final muscular endurance exercise we are going to do, I forgot. No, I really forgot. Let's think. I had plank. We did walking lunges. Now we are going to do, we'll just do body weight squats. So body weight squats are just your body weight. You don't need any weight. There was something else that I wanted to do, but I can't think of it. But we're going to do body weight squats, and it does improve your muscular endurance and strength. So when you squat, you want to make sure that your knees don't go over your toes, and you want your hips to go back. So you want to think of as your bottom touching the back wall or whatever is behind you. Weight is right in your heels. Don't let your toes go forward. You'll bend down and then just come back up. So we'll do some body weight squats with no weights, nothing involved. We'll just squat down and come back up. So let's just do 10 of those at your own pace. We'll start in 3, 2, and let's go. Down, bring your hips up when you come back up. Hips back, 2, hips back, bring them forward, 3, down, 4, down, 5, down, 6. If you can go lower than me, do it. 8, down, 9. One last one and hold. See how long you can hold it. Look at your form. Weight in your heels. And slowly come up and shake it out. Okay, so we went through 3 exercises that we can do at home to improve our muscular endurance and strength. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, welcome back to our next segment with playing our hand percussions. But let me clear some things up that I made a mistake on, okay? So, these are maracas, not cabasa. Cabasa is something that you rub with your hand, okay? These are maracas. So I got my hand instruments all mixed up because I was so excited to get going with you guys, okay? So remember, these are maracas, all right? And we already know our shakers that we made, okay? All right, so I cleared that up, okay? I didn't want to get you guys confused, all right? So I want to make sure that I cleared up my mistake, okay? So our last segment, we did our quarter notes and quarter rest, okay? And we clapped, all right? And everything was highlighted in yellow and red, okay? So what I want to do today, I want to go back and I want to clap it. This time I want to add our metronome, okay? Our metronome is something that helps keeps us in time, okay? If you don't have just a separate metronome like I have here, my own separate unit, you can also download metronomes from the Google Play Store and from the Apple Store, okay? I have an iPhone and I have an Android, okay? And I downloaded both metronomes on my phone for free, okay? It doesn't cost any money. They're free. That's a free app. So get with your mom, your dad, or your guardian, ask them if they could download a metronome for you, okay? It's real simple to work, okay? There's no tricks to it, all right? So I'm gonna start our metronome at probably about 67 BPM, beats per minute, and we're gonna clap through what we worked on our last segment. Okay, here we go. I got the metronome already going, okay? So remember, the music is right in front of you. Make sure that you're clapping and counting out loud. Okay, here we go. 1, let's clap measures through 1 through, let's say 12, okay? Measures 1 through 12 with our quarter notes and quarter rests, okay? And we want to clap to our metronome, BPM 67, all right? Here we go. 1, 2, ready, clap. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 outstanding job. All right, so here we go. Metronome is still set at the same BPM, which is 67. BPM means, that's right, beats per minute, all right? That's exactly what it means. All right, so here we go, all right? And I'm going to use maracas. So I'm going to use my right hand and my left hand. I'm going to alternate. And sometimes I maybe use both hands. Just depends, all right? Here we go. I'm going to count it off. 1, 2, ready, play. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 great, great. If you did that along with me, that was great. That was outstanding. That's exactly how you play with the metronome. You stay on beat, you count out loud. Never be too ashamed to count out loud. A good musician counts out loud, okay? Because it helps you read the music. You're reading those notes. So don't be afraid to clap. I mean, count. Don't be afraid to, well, don't be afraid to clap either, okay? So don't be afraid to clap and count out loud if you learn a new music, okay? That's just a good habit to have, okay? Very good habit to have. All right? So you guys are doing fabulous reading music. It's outstanding. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to use my shaker, my big shaker, and we're going to play along with the metronome. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 Great job. Great job. Great job. You did an outstanding job playing with that metronome, staying on beat. That's the most important thing. That's why we have a metronome, is to keep us on beat. All right? You did an outstanding job playing that music with your shaker and staying on beat. Now, let's learn something new. Let's move on to some new music, all right? Let's talk about some eighth notes. Okay, so as you see, you have the music in front of you. You can see the quarter note, quarter rest, half note, and rest, eighth notes, okay? So our new beats, our notes, I should say, is going to be our eighth notes and half notes, okay? Those are something new, all right, that we're going to add into this music, okay? So eighth notes can be beamed together or they can be separate, as you see on your music, okay? There's a beamed eighth note, and then there's a single eighth note, okay? And their counts are the same, okay? Just because they're separate doesn't mean that the count changed. It just means they're not paired up, okay? Beamed together. They just separate, all right? So we're going to do that. So let's clap. Let's just clap eighth notes and count, okay? So when you count an eighth note, it's just one and, one and, one and. So if I kept the eighth note going while I was clapping, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? So that's the eighth note. And remember, a quarter note is just one count. So it takes 2 eighth notes, 1 and, to equal 1 quarter note, because a quarter note you're already counting 1 and. When we add an eighth note to compare with that, 2 eighth notes to compare with the quarter note, it's 1 and, okay? Remember, it takes 2 eighth notes to equal 1 quarter note, okay? Music counting is just like math, okay? So it's real simple. It's real simple to do. It's not something so complex and so hard. You're a young musician, you smart, you can figure this out. Metronome is still set at the same BPM, which is 67. BPM means, that's right, beats per minute, all right? That's exactly what it means. All right, so here we go, all right? And I'm going to use maracas. So I'm going to use my right hand and my left hand. I'm going to alternate. And sometimes I maybe use both hands. Just depends, all right? Here we go. I'm going to count it off. 1, 2, ready, play. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 great! Thank you for tuning in.